eat it and cook it and stuff.
Alrighty, we are live. Wahoo!
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Sorry we weren't here last week. I was laying out track mat for a show here in Toronto.
Yeah, and we were doing more unpacking house stuff, work. You need push to talk. Oh, all I hear
Rue's
is
the one who sounds like the
you sound like a
squeak.
mouse.
I think they have they have acceleration on or something, so it makes it sound like they're sped up like 16 times or something.
Yeah. Oh my god, you literally sound like a fast forwarded
Alvin and the
tape,
Chipmunks.
like a chipmunk.
Yeah. That's actually how they made the Alvin and the Chipmunks back in the days. They just accelerated the speed of the people who were doing the talking.
Yeah, well, we'll have, I don't know, look in your voice settings. I have some kind of voice acceleration or something. Maybe just drop
I don't know.
re-add. That's always a good thing to try.
Try again, Rue?
Scared to speak.
You're back.
There we go.
It just sounded like a fast-forwarded tape. That's what it sounded.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I have about 16 ghosts living in my computer at any time. This is the problem when you build your own PCs and you're a medium. I'm so glad I can talk.
Okay.
Welcome to
how's everybody
episode
doing?
46.
The ghost
We were
in the
talking
machine.
about plants.
Oh yeah, we were talking about plants. Sophia, you were talking about garlic mustard.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to make this the theme of the episode, but we were just chatting about this beforehand. I made a friend last night who was explaining to me that garlic mustard is an invasive species, and it's also really beneficial for the people who pick it because you can use it as like food and medicine apparently. So like, I don't know, if you are into it and you don't like invasive plants that choke out other stuff in the ecosystem, then join us on the Ripping Out Garlic Mustard Brigade. Kind of like y'all in Philly were stomping out those moths or whatever. Like you're like, no, fuck those bugs. And you just smash the
Them
shit out of them.
flies.
Yeah, lantern flies.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And the difference between an invasive species and a non-invasive species, here's a really good example. Dandelions. They are not from North America, but they play nice with everything. They're food for the animals, like it's pollination. The root's really good for you. I had a friend once who was going on about how the milk inside the stems was really good for you. I'm not sure how though. And they play nice with everything, right? And they provide food for the animals. And they don't like choke shit out, you know? So nobody's ever, have you ever heard people ever be like, we need to get rid of these fucking dandelions, other than like people who are in suburbs and want their lawns to be emerald green and
It's been
an inch and a half long.
It's been such not quite an issue, but a little bit of an annoyance for me since we bought this house, because like we don't have like a homeowners association or anything like that, you know, so we just go by city ordinances of how you're supposed to keep your house or whatever. And really they don't like overgrown weeds onto the sidewalk, but according to the city, any green thing is a weed. So even if I had like tomatoes growing out front, and if it like encroached onto the sidewalk, I'd be getting like a ticket and all this crap, which is stupid. But it's been a point of contention.
Yeah, I think it has to do with accessibility for people who have like mobility assistant stuff. Because if you let a lot of people overgrow their shit, it can heavily crowd into the sidewalk.
It can. But they'll get you if you're like an inch poking out of your, if like a leaf is poking out of your fence, you know, like depending, and also like depending on how shitty your neighbors are and if they're gonna call on you. So anyway, like a lot of the previous owners, it looked like they had one time maybe planted some stuff, but they just really didn't keep up with it, and so there's a lot of things that are like growing, and a lot of them are considered weeds, you know, quote unquote. But I don't know. I've identified a lot of them out there. I have a lot of thistle, a lot of different varieties of thistle, that's growing out there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I know like that, like a lot of them are useful for things. There's this one big plant out there. Like there's these yellow flowers. They look like dandelions. I think it's a giant dandelion plant, but when I looked it up, it could also be this plant called sow thistle. So I don't know, but I got a lot of prickly thistle stuff growing out front. But the neighbors
Plants!
are all like, "You want me to spray some weed killer on your?" I'm like, "No. Keep your poison away from my house. Thank you." No.
I hate that weed
rip
killer
them
shit
out,
because it gets
you know?
into the fucking groundwater and it poisons everything
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not they spray it on your lawn or theirs.
Yeah, like it's just like, no, please don't do that, you know? Because people around here are very nice and neighborly, but like, please do not just take it upon yourself to spray weed killer on my shit, because I will be very upset with you.
Also,
That's war.
Thistle has a lot of good properties. Useful.
Like, what are some of the folklore like medicinal or folklore surrounding thistle? I didn't get that far yet. I just identified the plant.
Thistle, as far as I am aware, is generally speaking, is good for things like protection. And I think it also has, and don't quote me on this because I don't remember off the top of my head because I don't get to work with Thistle often, but I think it has like some consecration like properties. Like I think it's used in like to consecrate ritual items, I think. Yeah, stuff like that. I'll have to look it up. But I think it has like protective.
And a lot of the roots,
thorny and prickly tends to be protective.
Yeah, I have this giant thing. It's called bull thistle, I believe it is. I think that's what I've identified it as. And I was looking it up, and it's supposed to bloom this like pinkish flower from it. And I was looking up, I think it's like the national flower of Scotland or something like that. If my research was leading me down the correct path. The bull thistle. I'm pretty sure I have one of those growing out front. And for me being of Irish Scottish descent, I thought that was pretty neat.
Aren't jack pines Scottish as well? Like I know less about little plants and shrubs, but I feel like I like trees, so I read about them more. I can't remember what it was, but there is a type of pine I think that's
only in
Scottish, and there's not. No, actually, there's way more of them out here than there are in Scotland. I'm listening to an audiobook called Plants Have So Much to Teach Us. You only have to listen. If you're interested in the book, I recommend you just buy a copy because there's actually so much information that you're going to want to refer back to because there's like instructions in it. It's good as a read and a reference manual for certain things. Like one thing she was talking about in there is like how to use I think it's like mulched up Burke Barch for something like wounds. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like there's a lot of very specific knowledge in there that's like great to refer to. But that's where I was hearing about the jack pine thing, and if that's the correct tree, it may be. I could be wrong about that, but there was a type of tree that in Scotland it's rare to see because I think they're like a sign of the rebellion or something along those lines, and they were ripped out a lot, destroyed a lot. So there's not as many out there. And don't quote me on any of this because I could be super fucking wrong. I like heard it while I was driving on the road.
What was the name of the book again, Sophia?
Plants have so much to teach us. We just have to listen.
Chris was asking in the chat. Chris was actually saying a lot here in the chat. Chris, we should bring you on an episode, mix knowledgeable about all these plants and foraging stuff. I see you here in the chat. What were we saying in here? Oh yeah, foraging is a special interest of yours. Yes, you should chat our ears off about this. We would love to have you on an episode about foraging. I think that'd be fun. But Chris was saying that they have a
plants
lot
have so much to give us. All we have to do is ask.
What were they saying? Oh, garlic mustard has choked out a lot of other woodland greens here in northern Kansas. Wow, so that seems like that's everywhere. That seems to, if it's even gotten that far down into Kansas, that shit's everywhere.
Why am I lagging so much? I'm lagging like mad right now. I will just restart my phone really quick.
Okie doke. Sophia disappeared.
Just like at FDR Park, there's so much wormwood everywhere, or mugwort rather. It's everywhere.
I could have swore we were walking. We went to the zoo yesterday. I think I saw some mugwort on our walk, like from the parking garage into the zoo.
Yeah, it's mugwort grows everywhere here, but it's also pretty invasive.
It is, yeah.
But it's so useful.
That's
for a lot of things.
With gardening, so I missed this gardening season just with the timing of buying the house and, you know, prepping the space. So I'm using this season to like prep the space, get all them rocks up and, you know, get it all ready for next year. But it's like, how do you know what to plant, you know? When it just seems like, you know, like everything is possible, but it's like, well, this is invasive, but this is bad, but this is good, but this isn't good. Like how, like that's the thing for me is like it feels like such an overwhelming thing.
I think that, like, I mean, this is just from my perspective. Like, if you're going to grow invasive things, like one thing that I purposely do, and this is just because peppermint is very aggressive and it will take over everything. I make sure to grow peppermint in its own pot. Like, I would never put peppermint in the ground.
That's 100% what you're supposed to do, and it's totally fine if you do that.
Yeah.
So anything that's invasive, you want to like contain.
Yeah. Unless it's something that can pollinate over a long distance. I'm not sure about too many cases about that, but I know like when you're growing weed, for example, a single male plant left unkilled can pollinate over like a square kilometer or more. So like you could have just your plants growing out here in like a dense city in Canada, and just one person who's hobby growing and likes the shape of his male plant so he doesn't kill them will pollinate everybody's fucking seed or plants and make them seed out, and then you'll get like seedy bud, which is like not ideal.
Damn.
But I'm not sure how that works, and I'm not sure that many invasive species pollinate because I'm not an expert on the field. I always, whenever I hear about invasive species and foraging, I'm always like taking notes because it is like an interest of mine, but I don't know as much as I want to, and I feel like I'd rather learn from people than books because I don't know, a book can be incorrect and it's nice to have it to refer back to, but when like somebody actually knows their shit and they're taking you out and teaching you, you remember it and it sticks with you, I find. You know what I mean?
Remember it in a different way.
It's easier to refer back. So for me, memory is easier to refer back to like an event. I can remember somebody saying something to me in a given context easier than I can all of the individual words that I've read out of all the books that I've been through, right?
Yeah, plus when it comes to plants, like sometimes it's so hard to identify. Like some of them, there's so many little nuances between the different varieties of them.
Books can also be great for an identification guide too, right? If you don't have somebody to take with you, or if you're like unsure and there's two things that are close together.
Even if I have a guidebook, I'm such like a second guesser. Like I always second guess myself, you know? So like I could be out there and I even with the things I've already identified, I want to run them by a couple, you know, planty people. Actually, I'll probably post them in the Discord because it seems like Chris has an eye for all things green. So
I will post the book that I referenced in show notes. Would y'all prefer it in Audible, a Amazon link, or like a Wikipedia page?
Wait. Oh, Chris was saying yes, invasive things always grow in a container. And yes, you were interested in being a guest, but we should set that up at some point. We'll have to figure out a good time to have you on to chat about plants. I was successful with a garden when we were at our old place, and I really did it in a random sort of way. Like I didn't really have a plan. I just kind of bought some seeds. I bought like green beans and tomatoes and, you know, just stuff like I would eat. I just kind of like threw the seeds in the ground. I just watered them every day and made sure they were good, and they just popped right up. So I was like, oh, not too hard, right?
Oh, I wanted to sorry to circle back, but I had Googled the properties of thistle, and Scott was correct. And that the first thing that pops up obviously is protection. Which I tend to believe. I know everything is labeled it's for protection. But I do tend to believe that would be correct because it's a thistle.
Prickly.
Exactly.
Yeah, you line your hedges with it.
So it has the powers of protection, purification, hex breaking, and healing. Grown in gardens, it actually repels thieves. Keep it by the door; it wards off evil. You carry it in your pocket as a protective amulet, or portable ammunition against evil spirits. Throw one into the fire to instantly exorcise or purify an area, or to deflect lightning. Clothing made from thistle fiber makes the wearer immune to curses and breaks enchantments placed beforehand. It also represents endurance, courage, and the will to survive.
Hold up.
That
You mean to tell me I can curse break by putting a woven thistle shirt on a friend?
I suppose,
Yeah, it'll act as like, it's probably like, I would say if it's already there, it probably would just trap it in, right? Isn't that how we kind of do the whole protect thing? You got to take it off in order to protect yourself from it, right? But I mean, yeah. But I would also argue that like even if you got like thistle fiber and like braided a nice bracelet, boom.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I looked at the same thing, by the way.
Oh my God! Stop it!
What's the website?
I got really excited about the portable spirit ammunition. I was like, hell yeah! Just chuck one of the heads at like a ghost. It's like, no.
It also says
cool.
To call spirits, you can just boil thistle in a cauldron in front of you. When the steam rises, ask your question and listen for answers. Water will do, but wine strengthens the effect and makes the spirits more cooperative.
What is the place where you found this from? What's the website?
I will copy it.
Yeah.
Toss it in live show notes.
Yeah,
it'll be highlighted because I just put something in it.
Beach.
That's what's up. So I got a lot of thistles. So yeah, if y'all need thistle for anything, let me know. I have a shitload of it. Many different.
What I would recommend you do is research how to harvest it and process it, because once you've done that, you can leave it on standby for a certain set period of time. But like if you let it grow indefinitely and like it goes to seed and dies or whatever, or gets out of the stage where it's ideal, because some plants need to be harvested in a certain stage, you're kind of losing your window for it. So if you do have a lot, it would be advantageous to look up when and how to harvest it, and then to do so and prepare it.
Yeah, I had
thistle coming to the Betwixt Occult Supply store near you.
I encountered a book. So I treated myself to an item, a tech item. I got myself a Kindle Scribe. It was a birthday present. Yeah, I got a deal on it. I saw a deal pop up, and I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good deal. So I snagged it. I've really, because I do that writer thing where it's like you accumulate so many notebooks, and then you have so many notes spread across 1,000 different notebooks, or you have notebooks that you don't even write in because they're too pretty.
I like to burn my notebooks when I'm done with them.
That I've never, I can't say I've ever done that, but sometimes I do, toss them, after a certain amount of time. But I'm like, once I moved, I was like, I need to condense. Like, I'm tired of having 1,000 notebooks, right? So I was like, well, we're in the digital age. Let me get like a digital tablet, like a writing tablet. The tech is pretty good right now. So I got myself the Kindle Scribe. It was, it was the best for the price point. Not that I want to give Bezos any more money, but whatever. But it's really nice. And so I had gotten like a trial of Kindle Unlimited. It's also an e-reader. So I encountered this book. It was this tiny, short, little ebook, like a self-published book called Pennsylvania German Witchcraft. And I was like, well, click. Let me see. Let me read. I breezed through the whole thing. It was really short. So it was just this person. They are a descendant of like the German people that came over here and settled into that particular area of Pennsylvania, of what we would call like Amish country, basically. And she talked about the folk practices that she did growing up. And what really, really stuck with me was like, so when I'm doing my magic, right? A lot of it is like, I'm making a charm. I'm taking this thing, I'm tying this thing to this, or I'll glue this thing, and it's all very kind of like, maybe spirit-led, I would say. It's just me being like, yes, this association with this is with this, and it all kind of just comes together when I'm in the zone, like when I'm working on something. And now I have this spell or this item or this whatever. I have a finished product. But really, for me, what has always been is that the magic is in the making of the thing. I'm putting all of the intent, like while I'm making the thing. I'm doing the thing or writing the thing or whatever it is. That's where all the magic is. And so, but a lot of times, like in a lot of the, I guess, sort of like Wiccan books that I grew up like reading and understanding, is like you make your magical thing and then you charge it, right, with a chant or something or whatever. And that always didn't really speak to me because I'm a very quiet person. All of my magic is in my head. Like, it's all internal. I'm not really the type of person that's going to be like shouting at the moon at the top of my lungs. That's not really who I am. And so that kind of translates into my magic. And when I was reading this Pennsylvania German witchcraft book, literally what she writes in there is the way of the Pennsylvania German people is the making of the thing is the magical act. So it's like, this blanket that I made is for protection because I made it that way, not because like I made it and then I chanted this chant. It was because I made it with that intention. So it was just a really nice, sort of like affirming kind of thing, like for my own craft, and also like from an ancestral point. Like I do have, German heritage. Like I did the whole ancestry thing. I had some, ancestors settle out that way. So it was a very nice thing. But yeah, it's called Pennsylvania German Witchcraft. If anyone wanted to check it out and read about some folk practices.
That's actually really common within folk magic, sort of in general. The idea that magic is in like the as you do the thing. You know what I mean? Like as you weave, as you sow, as you maybe sow your crops, what have you. That's, I mean, but I think it also comes into the idea of like I sort of have this thing where like I talk to the plants that I'm working with. You know what I mean? Like I might talk to them, or even when I'm plucking them, I have like there are old incantations to say while plucking herbs for magic.
Now, do you verbally say them, or is it in your head?
I don't actually think that, like, there are some people, like, the only times I think I need to raise my voice is when I'm dealing with like spirit that's being erroneous.
Yeah.
Like when it's like I'm going to defy you and I'm going to cause issues kind of thing, and then I'll raise my voice. Otherwise, I might whisper, I might talk, but I think anything louder in most cases, it's going to break the that headspace you have to be in.
Yeah.
To like make magic happen. That sort of that relaxed place. Is if you're yelling, I can't relax if there's yelling, right? For multiple reasons, trauma included. I can't relax if people are yelling.
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't see how anyone could anyway. So yeah, I will speak out loud if I remember it, which like I am better at that now. But I also don't think that it's always necessary. Sometimes I think you can just chant in your head as you do something.
And I think it's just as effective.
That is also effective. Yeah, I do.
Like,
I think that it's effective.
Like, I don't think either one is more or less effective, whether it is in your head, whether it's like you can do this whole ritual in your head, this whole spell in your head. You can say all the words in your head, and it's still, because like that's where the magic happens anyway, is, sort of that it's in our head. Well, I don't want to say it's in our head. You know what I mean? It happens on that level.
I think
crazy, and it's all in our heads.
It's all in our heads.
I think it's perfectly acceptable to even say, I think really it's down to, we have to understand that just because something is in our head doesn't mean that it's ineffectual. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Like it's like one of those things where it's like, the nature of reality, right? Like the witch who travels to the other world, is that actually happening? Yes. Are you really?
Is your physical
like,
vessel
what does it mean
leaving?
to be really there? You know what I mean? Like, that's subjective, I suppose, right? Like you can't really sell someone that what they, especially when it's a shared experience amongst many people. And we've been talking about this sort of experience over and over and over again. That's why I kind of don't like when people like make these weird, very aggressive blanket statements about how like, all of us in the occult or, I've heard we've had a bad Halloween. That one I've heard on the train as they were talking about me years ago. I've heard that, it's just people who don't want to get a grip with the difficulties of reality. I've heard all sorts of things about us, people who practice the art of magic, and really it's a matter of we've been practicing magic longer than we've been religious. Animism came before every organized religion across the world.
Oh yeah, bud.
And I think that I think you can't deny people's a collective, like a species collective perception of something, right? Like I think it's a bit odd to say that it's nothing, right? When you have everyone from everywhere who has animism, right? Who has a perception of how we interact with the plants and the trees and the rivers and the rocks and the numinous in the land itself, right?
I mean, I think animism is really regardless of whatever your preferred religion or faith is. I think it's just kind of programmed into us. Like, look what people name their cars, like
yep,
or boats and things like that.
Absolutely. I think that there's something about how how we interact with the world around us, and essentially I think that that's also magic too. I think magic and animism, again, they were first, and I think that for our ancient ancestors and for those of us that still practice it, it makes the most sense. You know what I mean? It's a healthy space between like it allows for us to be logical, but also allows for us to be spiritual. I don't know what exactly how to put it, but it seems very healthy. It seems very practical. And for those of us who experience a deeply, I guess you want to call it spiritual. Some people don't like that, but that's fine. I do. For those of us that experience a more spiritual reality, I think that's I think it's appropriate. And I also do think once again, to go back to things being in our head, I don't think that that's it doesn't disprove anything, right? None of it, like just because we're operating within, I guess, the unconscious, or using the tools of the unconscious mind, doesn't mean that it's not having some real world effect. But that's
I think a lot about like, I don't know, I guess sometimes in social media spaces, like there's a lot of like performative people out there.
Big time.
Right? Like this is this spell and this is this. It's like I couldn't imagine filming a spell I was doing.
I hate that. It makes me so uncomfortable.
I couldn't imagine treating other people who have like their own unique practice like more than them too. Like that's the thing that really kind of drives me up the wall. Like I was chatting with other people last night who had like different systems and stuff, and normally I'm really chatty, but I was just like really fucking quiet because it's like, what do you even say to somebody who has a completely different worldview and how stuff works, right? Like I don't know. I find like a lot of people who post online too really do this whole "my thing's the best,"
It's actually, that's becoming a really big problem right now. With people being like, well, this system is more powerful. This inherent like, well, my gods can beat up your god, and my system is inherently more powerful because XYZ.
The pissing contest.
They're apples and oranges is what they are.
They have bigger dicks. Bomb them.
Yeah.
It is frustrating. Because I think it's frustrating when those of us who've worked really hard, you know what I mean, to try to cultivate a community where we know like all as we care about is that you get it. You know what I mean? I don't care how
I'm gonna
you
get on a fucking
getting it.
soapbox in a second. Go ahead.
I don't care how someone gets there to getting it, but it's nice knowing that other people get it. You know what I mean? And I've had the wonderful opportunity, and I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but working at Harry's before the Harry's Occult Shop, like OG Harry's, I've had the opportunity to work with people from all different backgrounds. And it was really nice because everyone just was like, your spirits and my spirits. It was like we just understood that these were houses of spirits that particular traditions worked with, and your system worked and my system worked, and we're going to work together in this space and make magic happen. You know what I mean? Like it was wonderful.
And sometimes there's overlaps and it's cool, right? But sometimes there isn't a lot and they're very different, and that's okay,
Yep. Which is what makes it even more
I was
cool.
gonna get on, and this is me gonna go a hard bitching for a moment. The point of the fucking occult community was to give people a space away from the bullshit of society where we're all trying to place ourselves above other people, right? Like, let's be real at the end of the day. If you're coming to this, you shouldn't just be doing it for seeking personal power. A lot of us are coming to it for understanding a way of living, again, understanding the shit that we've gone through and the isolation it causes, because goddamn, it can be isolating going through paranormal shit or dealing with spirits and not being able to talk to people because they think you're fucking crazy or going through psychosis or whatever, right? Like, the communities we were making was so that we could come together and not do that hierarchical bullshit and actually have something closer to anarchy, right? And anarchy just means the dissolution of unjust hierarchies, right? So why the fuck, when we have these practices that are supposedly liberating us from these systems that absolutely fucking chain us to them, why are we positioning ourselves as though we're better than other people? Why are we acting like our system has more grit than your system? What the fuck is the point of that?
Yeah.
What we should be doing is working together to create something bigger that subverts the system that oppresses us all. And that was the point. That was how the occult community was online for a while. Because when it started, it was smaller, and people weren't just these giant, selfish, jack-off dickbags. Like, there was a few of them, but they were less populated, right? And I don't know, sometime after the Balg thing happened, Become a Living God, if you're not aware, like, it just kept going fucking downhill for like the past 10 years. And it's even like the modern occult chaos scene or chaos magic scene, which was supposed to be the groups that divest themselves from that shit, have now become the people who enforce the hierarchies, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a fucking parody, because you give these people an inch, you give them a little bit of gold that they have, and suddenly they think they're kings, and they're repeating the same fucking hierarchies that they've had imposed on them because they have a lack of integrity and a lack of self-awareness to realize that the point was to disassemble the hierarchy, was to not have a king. Like, magic is not some centralized shit. We're not fucking armies invading other people, okay? It's a deep, meaningful pursuit of self-improvement and connection with stuff that is deep and meaningful to you on a personal level. It doesn't have to be anything else to anybody else, right? But when we start doing this, my e-peen or my mage peen is bigger than your mage peen shit, I'm sorry, you've lost the fucking script, and you're getting your mage license revoked. You're getting your mage card taken away if you act like your paradigm is inherently better than anybody else's. Sorry, not sorry. That's the rules going forward. The rules are in effect as of Pride Month. So you have about 2 weeks to get your shit together. Thank you.
Well, your mage cards are revoked. We should send out notices to certain people.
That's my soapbox rant. That's my fucking soapbox rant. Thank you. I'm gonna hit this bong.
Could you imagine, like, we just
fucking right.
We just like send people messages, like people that are like known dickbags in the occult community. We would just like to inform you that you have 2 weeks to get your fucking shit together and stop being a colossal twat on the internet. Love, which is Betwixt.
For real, and it's just...
Let's do it.
We'll be by to collect your mage
honestly,
card.
It's just bringing colonization into witchcraft, right? Because witchcraft or colonization is about imposing hierarchies on people and places where there shouldn't be fucking hierarchies, right? So what? You're gonna colonize magic too? Sorry, I just said I was done, but
that
I'm
hurt
not,
me.
apparently.
It hurt my soul.
No, I get it. It frustrates me to no end, you know. And it's funny because there's a lot of things that I mean, I don't want to go here because I already kind of started doing this at the end of like the last episode, but I guess it makes sense. But
Continuation.
Yeah.
it's like even I was on TikTok and someone was talking about how they use the term "use a god," like, oh, you could use this god for that. And I remember when I should say I used to use that, but it was more like a catch-all. I didn't really understand what I was saying. But the thing is that I also realized too that when it was explained to me why we used it, which was because when I was coming up in witchcraft and magic and paganism and all that, gods similar to herbs and plants and warts, as it were reduced to correspondence charts.
Yeah.
And associations.
Yeah.
And you know, we reduce them down to this sort of something you use. And
I think it's because we lost a lot of those connections, and so
yeah.
I think the correspondences were at least like the start, right? You know, like it's at least I know where I can start if I want to do this thing.
They're useful. They are useful when you have
a connection,
the full picture. Yeah. But I think realizing that a lot of this is in partnership in some way. You know what I mean? Even if, again, like, you know, even if you're coming from like the spirit model, as it were, or the energy model for that point, like you still have to sort of, there has to be you can't just take it. You know what I mean? Like, so even if you more see it as like an energy, and not like a tiny god like I do, you still can't just be like, I'm taking you to do this thing and I'm taking all your energy, haha. You know, like I don't really see how that's respectful either.
Right.
So there has to be some level of respect given to the substance. Because that substance can be anything. Like Darian's studying practical alchemy. And where I've been kind of interested myself in alchemy, and
yeah, me too.
So I'm like super curious about, like, you know, one day setting up a lab and working with material and
yes.
I was looking up the what are they called, Faraday lamps or ghost lamps or ghost fire, whatever. Which is funny because I in the past I've had, while meditating, have wanted to do necromancy around a green fire, which is essentially a Faraday lamp. So I was like, okay, so now I get where we're going. You know, so seeing how, like, even the substances that we would consider inorganic or harmful, you know, all this stuff that a lot of the more the spiritual bypassy parts of us, you know, community, they'd be like, oh, we don't work with that stuff. But really, like, what's to say that isopropyl alcohol doesn't have properties?
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Like, yeah.
It has
like
properties to clean my bone.
See, it's cleansing. It's purification.
It also is really useful. But it's also really useful. If you get a high enough proof isopropyl alcohol and you have aches and pains, and you rub it on the things that hurt, it actually reduces, like,
yeah, you can use it as a topical. Although I think you're supposed to use it in a 50% distribution and no stronger, but I could be wrong about that.
So it's really funny that you say that, because Denise, my half Spanish, half Italian, like, stepmother, literally bathes in 99% isopropyl alcohol. Like, she just rubs it all over her skin, all over, and she's like, it stops the bugs, and I don't like, it's perfectly fine. I'm like, you don't burn to a crisp as you walk outside.
She's also a heavy smoker.
It's not the worst.
She smokes.
It does strip out a lot of oils from your hands. I work with it a lot as like a cleaning solvent. But it's in correct doses. It's actually very useful as a topical analgesic or anesthetic. I'm not sure what the word specifically is.
But yeah, if you got enough oil in your skin, you could just bathe in that shit and you're fine.
But like that's
don't get it in your eyes or your mucous membranes because it can make you go blind.
Now I'm like thinking of modern things that have like magical associations, right? Like you can strip paint off with what is it, Coke or Pepsi or both of them, right? Like cola.
Believe it or not, one of the best things you can use to strip paint comes back to plants, which is turpentine, which is like a decoction of all the terpenes in a given plant, which is super interesting.
I'm saying like if you want to do like I don't know, like because soda's corrosive, right? So like if you had like
some sodas are,
you can.
So
I'm just trying to think of modern things you can use for spells. Yeah,
so
Scott has me.
Here's a good example of that. Coca-Cola is extremely corrosive because a lot of the chemicals added to it. But if you were to take like Jones soda, which comparatively is a very clean soda, it's like often 30 odd grams of sugar in a bottle, and the ingredients list is very short comparatively, and I'm pretty sure if you left like a penny in that, it's not going to polish it because the carbon dioxide doesn't do that much, right? But if you put it in Coca-Cola, it's going to fucking just eat away at the outer sheen of it, right?
So yeah, I don't know, you could do some interesting like
it's all context
jar spells with soda and like corrosive. I don't know. I like to go down weird because like Scott got me on the alchemy thing, and now I'm like, like modern alchemy. What's that like?
But I mean, like, sure, there's all sorts of preparations, and I was watching this one channel on YouTube that is the guy was studying practical alchemy, and yeah, he like was mixing something. He's like, you need this to be in like a well ventilated area, wear a appropriate chemical mask,
Yes.
But I mean,
don't be a dumb.
But like nevertheless, because whatever the substance was released noxious fumes. And you don't want to play with noxious fumes, people.
Even when I'm making like eggshell powder or the brick dust, like I realized very quickly because I was masks. I was just like, oh, let me pop an N95 on while I'm doing this because because I was blowing that shit out of my nose for days. Like I was like, I should not be breathing this in.
I ain't trying to get miner's lung. Hell, so no.
Right. So, but I mean, these compounds, these substances have, I mean, even in alchemy, they had a spirit, right? A genius to them.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of these things have been lost, and I talk about how I'm really thankful for that big push in our community for solid academia. And now that academia is starting to take seriously the practice of magic again, we're sort of getting back the
science.
sort of this almost the sciencey and also just the lost knowledge, the stuff that kind of filled holes that like things are getting filled in that we didn't have precedent before, whether it's history as far as like pagan religions are concerned, like religious parts of that, or it's the green magic and alchemy, like things are kind of all coming back together. And then we could take it with actual practice, you know what I mean, and we can expand upon it through doing the work.
It's like I always think of this, right? It's like both things can be simultaneously true. Like the magic-y, esoteric, spiritual angle that we're all talking about, like all of this stuff, all of this. So like take a thunderstorm, for example. So like if you follow like a Nordic path, that's Thor striking his hammer, right? The thunder, the lightning, Thor's doing something. But if you talk to someone who, you know, is meteorology is their thing, like, well, it's actually when these clouds come together and blah, blah, you know, when these conditions happen, that makes a thunderstorm. Well, what if when Thor strikes his hammer, these conditions happen? Right? So it's like both things can be simultaneously true. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So
think that
I think that's where we're trying to get to.
There's an importance in the stories that we tell ourselves about these things, right? Like, I believe personally, like, for instance, that, like, you know, I've had people, you know, they say, for instance, a big critique that I've gotten from anti-theists is, you know, well, you pray to the sun. You know, they're like, well, the classic pagans used to believe that if they didn't pray, the sun wouldn't rise. And the thing is that I like to argue that, I mean, that may well be true at some point, but I would also argue that is it possible that over time they just understood that if they didn't pray, it was just the sun rising.
Right.
The symbolism behind the sunrise had to be ritualized in order for a thing not just to be a thing. It's the same reason why putting herbs into a bottle or making an oil isn't necessarily, you know, there has to be something to it. You know what I mean? There has to be some kind of something to make it magical. Otherwise, it's just
The
something
intent.
you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get what does that you get what I'm getting
It's
at here?
kind
The
of like,
stories we tell are
yeah,
important.
it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about the creating of the thing, the intent behind the thing, whatever the thing is that you're doing. That's what makes it magical.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually looking up
Water
a
break.
really beautiful quote from The Hogfather by
The
Terry Pratchett.
Hogfather.
It's a
I
Terry
have got
Pratchett.
to read Terry Pratchett books. I have to.
Have them.
Oh, do you have some?
You have them.
Terry Pratchett?
Yes. I put them away. I swear.
No, I have like Robert Jordan, which I haven't read yet. No, I don't think I have Terry Pratchett. That's all the Discworld stuff. I don't think I have any of those. I have a lot of books, but I don't think I have that.
I swear I saw that author's name when I was putting. There's so many books.
So many books.
We had to turn down 2 bookshelves because we just don't got the space for the bookshelves.
That was also my other kind of motivation behind getting the Kindle Scribe. I was like, especially for referencey magical books, I think it's way easier to search in digital format than flipping through a book.
Oh, absolutely. I love having my Kindle because that way I can kind of reduce
Yeah.
how many. I mean, there's a lot of the books that are on my Kindle that I do want to get physical copies of in the future, but at least I have them. You know what I mean? For right now. Absolutely. There's so many good books coming out too.
I know, I hate it. Also, my book. I'm gonna write a book. I don't know what it's gonna be about. I don't know if it's gonna be fiction, nonfiction, if it's gonna be about my life.
Y'all hear it here. Y'all, someone, I'm gonna postmark this. It is May 12th, 2024 at 2:53 p.m. And my husband has announced on podcast, on live stream, that he's gonna write a book. And I made him, I was like, you're gonna buy this Kindle Scribe, you're gonna write a fucking book. So, postmark.
Yeah.
I guess I should tell y'all a little secret then.
Ooh, are you writing a book?
No. Kind of. It's similar but different.
You're talking about your game.
Yeah, I'm working on writing a video game by starting writing a TTRPG system and getting people to play it with me. I have a whole 3-part story laid out. It's hopefully going to be a CRPG, but that's if it ever actually happens. I could work on this for over a decade and it could just never happen, but we'll see.
A labor of love.
But that's the thing, like, the cool people I was hanging out with that I met last night, I mentioned I was interested in maybe starting my own game studio down the line one day, and they're like, okay, dope. We like actually know a lot of people who kind of do that stuff, and
that's cool.
Would like be into writing for that. I'm like, that is fucking the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, we're gonna see what happens.
So back to kind of like what we were talking about a little bit earlier about like natural phenomenon and the sciencey and mystical explanations of them all. So this geomagnetic storm, right? It just happened. A lot of people saw the northern lights in places where we don't normally see the northern lights.
I'll put my video in the show notes for anybody who wants it.
Oh, you have pictures and stuff.
Sweet.
A video.
I know in Erie, Pennsylvania, they were able to see it. I was asleep there, but I don't know if we would have seen it in Philly. I don't know, with like city light pollution. Not sure, but I was thinking about this. Like everyone's, we knew that this geomagnetic storm was going to happen, and we knew this was going to be like, this thing that was happening, and in a way, is like because we knew it was going to happen. Is it like, does that make it less impactful? Because like, how do we all interpret this very obvious omen that has occurred?
Oh, here's the thing.
How are we interpreting this?
Just because it happened didn't mean that you got to see it, right? Like, I'm in an area that, like, when you tell Americans, yeah, you don't always see the Northern Lights in Canada, they're like, whoa. But, like,
Right.
They don't always realize that, like, the significant majority of Canada's population lives on the fucking border, right?
Right.
And, parts of Canada are further south than parts of America. Like Colorado's further north than Toronto. I hope you all know that. And
yeah.
I was driving home from Guelph last night with the people in the car, and we ended up seeing the Northern Lights. And I took the video there, and you can like hear them kind of talking slightly. There's not really much said, but we thought that at least I thought that we were going to see it as we kept driving. But like, I kid you not, we got like 5 kilometers later and like it was gone. Right. So you don't always see it in the precise location that you're at. So like, yeah, actually, if you saw it, it was a bigger omen than you expect it to be because other people 5 kilometers over might not have seen it. Right.
Right.
And it was so potent where we saw it, we could see it through full rainy cloud coverage because it was fucking pissing rain last night.
Mm-hmm. So how did it feel? Like, what was the vibe?
It felt like right place, right time. I was supposed to be in that car with those people driving on that road, and that I should pay attention to the connections I was making. Which is why when the one person was talking about repping out invasive species and organizing groups for it, my ears perked up, and I was like, "Well, shucks, I'm a laborer and I can do a lot of work without bitching about it. So let's go. I'll rip some plants out with you and help you plant some new ones." So
it's funny you mentioned that,
cool.
Sophia, because I'm kind of built similarly. Like, I'm such a workhorse kind of person. Like,
oh yeah,
once I am on the task, I am on the fucking task until it is done, kind of thing. Like that's how I've been with like all this moving shit and unpacking, and I'm like, I'm just gonna get it done. It's just gonna get done.
I feel you, and like I do. I've done labor as a living since I was 15. So I'm very practiced at doing things. I know that sounds very vague, but I assure you that's exactly what I'm practiced at.
I'm very good at doing things.
Yeah, just doing things. So yeah, it really felt like right place, right time. And like it was weird too because my friend had a party that I was supposed to go to last night that if they didn't cancel, I wouldn't have stayed later and given those people a ride home, and I wouldn't have seen the Aurora Borealis at that time and place. And it was like weird that the party just so happened to get canceled, you know? And then I kind of felt guilty, and I'm like, oh no, what if that was like the spirits being like, I know the only way you're going to stay late enough at this party to give people a ride home is if it's canceled. So we're going to go make the auntie stay over at that place so that they can't have the party while their parents are out.
I wish, because apparently we were supposed to be able to see it. Supposedly.
Yeah. Did you stay up? Were you awake? around that time?
It was super overcast. Apparently, we couldn't see it. Everyone said we were supposed to in Philly, but we couldn't because all the rain we're getting.
It has been very wet this spring. Like I don't know. It like almost unnaturally weird.
I think it's just because, we're not tending to the environment like we're supposed to.
Yeah, because it's been like it was like 90
The planet
degrees.
is dying.
It was like 90 degrees, and then like 2 days later it was like 60 degrees. I'm like, that can't be good. That can't be right.
Yeah.
The thing is, I realized last night. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No. I was gonna say, like, I don't know. Like, I always feel like that's normal for Philly, though. Like, where like we get like this fall spring, and then suddenly it gets real cold again,
And then it's
like
hot.
then it's like real hot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty normal around here, but I don't know. What were you saying, Sophia? I apologize.
No, it's okay. We just spoke at the same time. There's nothing wrong. I realized last night that like pretty much anything that you want to be doing to making the world be a better place that you feel like you can't do, there's actually already someone doing it who you can meet up with and learn from and partake in the experience, right? And like a really good example is like, again, exactly what I was talking about, ripping out invasive species and planting in like good stuff that's from the area that helps the environment, that helps climate change, that helps like environmental degradation, it helps the pollinators. Like there's just so many big impacts about little actions, right? I'm going to give you an example about this. I'm not going to talk about the Kendrick Drake beef a lot in the episode. I'm only going to bring it up because it's just happening and I'm about to talk about Kendrick Lamar's album.
I vaguely
obviously
know the beef. I don't know.
I
know
can
they're
explain
beefing,
to you
but I don't know why.
I'm not. But one, I'm not from the culture, and I'm not going to profit off of talking about it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people are really getting in on it who I feel like kind of shouldn't be, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people ride the coattails of popular things. It's the nature of popular things.
Fuck, what was the point I was making before I brought up the Drake beef?
You were talking about you were gonna reference Kendrick Lamar his album or something, you were saying?
But what was I saying right before that? Yeah, I was gonna reference one of his albums because it was making me right, that's it. I remember. There's a song called Duckworth. The album I was introduced to Kendrick Lamar with was Damn, and I really liked it. And the song Duckworth at the end talks about how his dad worked at a drive-through. And there was this guy who he knew who was coming through who was going to rob the place and like potentially shoot the place up. And he had a kid, and that's why he was working so hard to like send him to college and shit. So he was thinking quick about what he could do to de-escalate the situation. And as the guy pulled in the drive-through up to the window, he just gave him a bunch of chicken and like some biscuits and a drink for free. And he appreciated it so much he didn't rob the place. And then every time he came by, he kept doing it. And then they kind of formed like a friendship and then like ended up never robbing the place. And then the dude went on to go make a record company. And then Duckworth's son Kendrick would then start getting into rapping as a teenager. And when he went to his first record label to start rapping, it was actually run by the guy who was going to rob the KFC. And Kendrick's dad and him laughed because they realized if that like hadn't gone down the way it would, he would end up in jail and he would have ended up dead and Kendrick wouldn't have been here making the music, right? But because he chose to solve a situation in a good way, everybody made out better for it, right? And it's just like this theme of little actions that make a big difference that you don't necessarily think are going to do what they do. But just like that kind of action there made it so his son became one of the biggest rappers in the world and like one of the best lyricists of all time, right?
That's crazy.
Like, and like that's the concept of the album is like you can play the album in reverse and it plays the alternate timeline of what would have happened if his dad had actually died from the robbery and how his life would have gone from his own perspective, right? Like it's really fucking well written.
Wow.
And it really just drives home like the little actions that happen, how you choose to navigate conflict will resonate profound impact into the future, both positive and negative, right? And I've learned this through my own negative actions that I've done that have held repercussions to me, like to this day, that I'm still
Dealing
in
with.
regret about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say dealing with, I'm just in regret about, right? Like, what do
Mhm.
you do? You can't change what's done, you can just be better, right? So it is what it is. You just learn more and move on and keep going, right? And like, fuck, I'm gonna quote a line from Skyrim. And I don't see myself as wicked, let me be clear. But the quote is, what's better, to be born good and know nothing but and do only that, or to be born wicked and to choose to do good regardless?
Yeah.
And when I heard that from that character, I was like, fuck, I can't kill you.
Damn it.
No, it wasn't a damn it. It was like a holy shit. I see your point, and I'm gonna side with you actually, because you're right. You've only been good, and they're just saying to kill you because you're a dragon. It's Parthernax, or Parthernax, however you say it. It's been a hot fucking minute since I played Skyrim. But
I've
that really
actually
made me question morality a lot. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
no, I've actually had a very similar conversation talking to a friend of mine who was, they're Catholic by, association, I suppose. They
Mm-hmm.
believe, but they're sort of whatever about it, right? And I remember them like talking to me about my feelings on like morality and religion. And the question of like, can you be moral if you don't have a religion or if you're
Yeah.
not Christian? And, I personally believe, as both just a person, who practices the occult and thinks, but also as a psychology major, that we should be able to form our own morality. You know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
kill as many people as I want to, which is none.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I don't go out of my way to cause harm intentionally because I don't want to, right?
Right.
I do it because, and I guess in essence it's a choice, right? It's a deep choice, but I don't have the drive to do it. But it's still, those times when you're angry. Sure, we've all been that moment where it's like you're so mad at somebody that in the moment, yeah, sure, if you got your hands on them and you want to wring their neck, but you don't. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you can acknowledge just in your humanity that that's where your morals come from.
Mm. Yeah, like
You
that's always kind of been my worldview, is like humanity. Like, us as a species, we are smart enough, intelligent enough, and powerful enough that we can all be chilling. Like we can all be okay. We just have to get over the shit that's in here, up in our minds, all the shit that like we just create.
I think it's more like it's a large amount of what is stopping us from chilling those the oppressive structures, and they're very real regardless of how much of a
Yeah.
construct they are, right? And
Yeah.
that's like the crux of the whole issue.
Yeah, the shit that we've created our own prisons, like created prison of our own making kind of thing. Just it's so dumb. That's what it makes me angry, because it's dumb. We could all be chill.
No, I
I
get what
want
you
to
mean. I do.
I kind of want to steer it slightly though. It's not even a prison of our making, because how many of us were complicit in making it? I
Yeah,
like
true.
to call a spade a spade. It's a prison imposed on us by a ruling class who wants to keep us all locked as servants in perpetuity with no route of escape. They want an absolute perfect level of dominance that can never be questioned or deferred from, and anything short of that they will burn the planet for, right?
Which is so
And that's why
dumb.
we can't chill.
which is so dumb.
Well, I mean,
Stupid.
you like.
Oh, I hate it.
There's something that
dumb
psychologically happens when you give someone so much power and so much distance from other humans in their life that they can make these abstract choices, right?
Yeah, they just go
they
fucking
don't
berserk.
really feel the repercussions. They're not part of the people who die and lose their communities and their entire worlds from it, you know?
If you lose community, you lose your humanity. Like, that's just really kind of what it boils down to for me, is like, you have to have some kind of togetherness.
I mean, I don't know. I've lost community and I still have my humanity. I've lost community many times.
You still have community, though. You know?
Sure.
Like, you have this community.
I mean, I struggle with that, though. That's... What were you gonna say, Scott?
No, I think because like it's funny because I totally know where your I think I get where your hesitation is coming from, but I totally get what Jay is saying. Like I think it's like prolonged not exclusion, but like prolonged separation. Yeah, isolation, separation from community often makes us as a species makes us a little strange. It definitely can exacerbate. Like the case in point, the lockdown.
Yep, we all did not know how to react to each other when we came out.
We are like, the amount of the amount of mental illness that came to light in people who said they didn't have it, although I believe that they all were maybe a little bit less well than they thought they were, but I digress. The point of the matter is that it definitely exacerbated the issue, right? It made it worse. And it definitely brought it to light, if nothing else. And
it turned me absolutely feral.
Right. And but at the same time too, to kind of keeping in line with the whole witch theme as well, there is something about living on the fringes, right? Like a lot of people do talk about how the life of a practitioner is a bit lonesome. Even I find it really hard now to have any worthwhile interactions with people who don't practice the art, and it's really hard because what I'm realizing is that so much of my adult life is shaped from my worldview. Like when I stop for a minute and I'm grateful because that gentle breeze, and I could feel the like it seems so almost ridiculous or performative to people who don't kind of get my my I don't know, my gratitude for these simple interactions with these spirits as I perceive them, right? Though for them it's like it's a gust of wind. Why are you smiling? And it's like I'm grateful for it.
Same fucking way. Like I really am. Like those moments of silence that you get, those moments of stillness, or those little magical moments, you're just like, this is why I practice magic. This is why I do it.
And I'm odd to these people.
Yeah.
And I've had many experiences like this. I'm not going to mention anything one in particular at the moment because I just don't feel like it. But to a lot of people, it's odd now, right? Especially I know for in like the queer community, it's a bit like it's funny because it's kind of a hit or miss. Either we're witches and occultists, or wanting to be, or we're very, very hard up anti-theists.
Or we're occultists, but we don't really like nature. Like
that one I have seen that.
Yeah, like I like magic and candles and oils, but I don't really do like the outside. And it's like, ooh,
why? Oh,
okay.
But I have seen that.
Nature?
But I also identify as pagan. Like, if I was to describe my faith, my spirituality, my spiritual take, I am pagan. Like that's just kind of the general label I put on. I'm all about Mother Earth. Let's protect the goddamn planet we live on. It's the whole reason we're fucking alive. Okay.
I've noticed that. Excuse me. Oh God. I've noticed that when people ask what your faith is, and like I really thank Philadelphia Pagan Pride for like enlightening me to this term. I think pagan is becoming more accepted. I'll never forget, I had to drive my neighbor on the day that we moved into this house. I had to drive my neighbor to the VA hospital in West Philly, and he literally asked the worst question that any witch can be asked while sitting in rush hour traffic on 95, and it's like, what's your religion? What do you believe in? And I'm like, wow.
About that.
About that. I know
the
you're a
sun and the
patron.
moon and
I know you're a patron of literally the church that I grew up in, that my grandfather helped build.
everyone's
I was
Catholic.
like, everybody's
block.
Catholic, and everybody goes to the
Everybody's
church
like-
that I grew up in. It's just
It's a very Catholic block.
Catholic block.
Holy
And
stromboli.
Yeah.
and his son, who is our other neighbor with the bus, is very strongly Catholic. And we're not sure how he's gonna take the first time we have a ritual in the backyard. We're just gonna have to wait and see, and maybe get some higher fences. But yeah, I just told him, I was like, I'm pagan, and he's like, and he seemed confused, and I'm like, earth-based religion, and he's like, oh, that's cool. I respect that. And that was like the end of the conversation. And I was like, oh, blessed Mother Gaia, Lilith, Lucifer, anybody who's listening, thank you. But yeah, pagan is a good term. It's a good term.
Yeah. Unless people go, the motorcycle gang, and you're like, no.
Oh yeah, that one always works. But yeah, I think at this point, as far as faith goes, and we all know I've had a journey with religion. I think I'm pretty much one of those. I've come to this. I'm definitely pagan, but I think it's better described as like dual faith. Because of my saint worship.
Yeah.
And like all of this, the folk magic stuff. Realizing more and more about what that entails and what that can look like, and I don't really have. It's funny because I don't have much of a relationship with like Christ at all, and it's not because of religious trauma. I just don't feel like I get anything from it. When I've tried to work spells using that name, it just but when I pray to the Madonna, like weird things happen. Like
I have theories on the Christ thing, because just a brief. So like all magic is on a current, prayer is magic, right? So like the Christ current, if we're going to call it that, like that current of magic and worship,
Christian magic.
I think so I think like this whole evangelical movement that's very like loud and strong right now in that Christ current is fucking with it, because they are not following the teachings of Christ at all.
Right, that is
in these movements. So I think that was just my theory, my running theory.
I mean, yeah,
which might be why it's a little odd.
It's funny because, like, for a lot of these Christians, saint worship is devil worship.
Right, because that's only a Catholic thing. Only the Catholics deal with the saints,
and Episcopalians.
Right? Oh, okay.
But Episcopalians are much less mystical about it. They don't really do like the theurgy and all that stuff. Like there is like the body and blood of Christ thing. Like it's not it's not supposed to be transmutated. Which is fine, not making fun. But yeah, so like I just settled on like dual faith. Like it is what it is, I guess. Like yeah.
But I guess
I
that kind of
really
brings
know.
It kind of brings me back to what I was saying about like occults, like some occultists that aren't very like naturey, because it's like it tends to be that a lot of the people that I know that are in the magic realm that I associate with tend to have a pagan sort of worldview, right?
Which
but not every
yeah.
occultist does.
Yeah.
Not everyone does. Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot. Well, you have to remember, for a lot of occultists, like if we're using the words not interchangeably, like right now, I am specifically talking about occultists and witches, and I don't mean the same thing.
Right.
For a lot of the occultists, it's a heady practice, right? It's a very inward, sort of thing, right? For the witch, for the animist practitioner, for the pagan, these things are
worldly.
Worldly. Like it's immediate. But there's less of, I mean, it's immediate for the occultist, but in a very like Jungian way, right? Like it's very much like nothing is exactly happening outside of the unconscious, right? Whereas even though I believe it's all housed in the unconscious, so I do have that part that I've taken from the occult because I think it's very rational. And it helps me make sense of things, but I do think that just because it's happening in the collective unconscious doesn't mean that I don't think that there's not like liminal space, or that we're not experiencing extra normal, supernatural, or paranormal phenomena, and maybe more so than lay people. Like, it's not that I'm saying that none of that exists. It's just that it's housed in the collective unconscious. And it's sort of, and as I've said, I think it was in the last recording, like things are, blatant displays are rare, right? Or rarer. They're not as common as we think they are. They just seem more common when you experience things more often. Does that make sense? But I, like as far as like how I move through that, like it's weird because like I don't believe in original sin. I don't believe in like, there's a lot of it that I don't believe in, but I think that I kind of enjoy that because there is something about the heresy and the blasphemy and the apostasy that I like about sort of working with the saints and having a wonderful relationship with the saints and the archangels and whatnot from a very folk Catholic practice. And I love that it works so potently for me, whilst at the same time, I've renounced my baptism, on a Sunday at midnight kind of thing, right? I don't really know if it is dual faith at that point. I don't really know exactly what it is. I think that's why it's like so like even still I'm kind of like I don't know, because a lot of the folk.
I would just like to chime in because like as someone who was raised Catholic with that saint worship like very heavily like was taught basically since 3rd grade on, like once you received your first confirmation, it was just like it was part of the curriculum. And it doesn't it just saint worship just feels like another offshoot of like your big 3, like the main 3 energy kind of thing, like that Jay talks about a lot, and like he could probably explain it better than I can, but like I feel like that
gods, named gods, are just facets of larger gods.
Right, exactly, and saints are just another branch of that. And so I don't know, I feel like saint worship could also be included, like, it doesn't have to be separate from paganism, like, it's kind of the same thing.
Because a lot of those saints were former pagan gods, some of them.
Yeah,
Literally
there's
Saint Bridget, yeah.
There's also even some there's also some scholarship that would suggest that there are some saints that were part of the fairy faith of Ireland as well. So like, fairies from the fairy faith. So I mean like I guess that's really I guess that's what it is. I suppose it is just all pagan. I just see my Catholic magic through a pagan theology.
Because
yes.
Yeah, because Christianity absorbed, pagan beliefs and practices into it. And so I guess that's why you work with the saints in particular so well, and not particularly Christ, and better with the Madonna because, well, she gets it. She knows what's up.
There's so much about, the Madonna that is so, it's fascinating because when you read through like the Black Madonna, which we have like these really old sculptures of, it's believed that she's the Black Madonna is believed to be a leftover, a carryover from a pagan religion. Probably like, it could be, Minoan of Crete. I forget exactly where we found one of the first depictions of the Black Madonna, but it's definitely believed to be some sort of culmination or a combination of early Catholicism and paganism. So, it's interesting that that sort of route moves through, the Italian, Roman, and Greek traditions. Yeah. So that's interesting. Thank you guys for helping me sort that out.
Look at us. Doing the Lord's work.
Theological conversations on this witchcraft podcast.
On this fine Sunday.
Are we actually having a theological conversation? Sorry, I'm quoting the
think
craft.
so, I guess.
That was from the craft.
Oh.
Are we actually having a theological conversation here?
It was so funny. We were literally just organizing organizing in the basement, and where I'm gonna hang my grandmother's portrait above my altar down there, and we have I took a statue of the Madonna from my mom. It was actually my godmother's. It's the most witchy Christian artifact I've seen. Like, there's candles and there's a place for offerings and the whole 9 yards.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
yes.
Oh, it's isn't it Our Lady of Fatima?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
that one.
Thank you.
I've been on a whole I've been on a kick. One of these days I'll talk more about Madonna worship and all that stuff.
Also, Madonna worship. No. Madonna, not to be confused with Madonna.
Right, the Madonna.
Give a shout out to Bob the Drag Queen for landing the gig of the century.
Oh, on tour with Madonna, right?
Yeah. Got paid like $1 million or something, supposedly.
Wow. Okay.
Sage,
What's
I see you in the
up?
chat. Hello, Sage. The goddess transforms. Yes, she does indeed. I feel like maybe she was listening in on this episode. We've had some really nice conversations here today, which we have prattled on for over a fucking hour. Sorry guys, we're long-winded today. It's because we didn't stream last week, or we didn't.
Yeah, that's totally.
We streamed some Dreamlight Valley, and Chris was hanging out in the chat, and that was a good time.
That's what I was trying to say at the beginning of the episode when I sounded like a helium rat. It's like, we were live last Sunday. I was playing some Dreamlight Valley, and guess what? I found my headset, and I'm going to be streaming some more of that because it was fun, and it gives me an excuse to play my favorite game. So,
are you going to stream right after this? Is that what your plan is?
Maybe.
No, not to put you on blast.
I'm going to go.
Put me on blast, I guess.
As soon as we're done this, I'm going to go bake a cake for my mom for Mother's Day and then start cooking dinner.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It is Mother's Day here in the US. Is it a different day in Canada? Do you have a Mother's Day? Does Canada have a Mother's Day thing?
Yeah, it's today.
Okay, so it's the same day. Okay, cool. So yeah, if you have so call your mom if you have a good relationship with your mom. I have to do that. Oh god, I have to do that after this. If you don't have a good relationship with your mom, there's always Mother Gaia. Love your mother.
Yes, goddess worship on Mother's Day. That's totally valid.
Yeah.
Alrighty, everyone. So I think we're going to kind of wrap it up. Any concluding thoughts from anybody, or are we good? Have we prattled on?
No.
Oh, I have one. But kind of going back to Sophia's thing. Remember to it's okay to pull and pull invasive plants, but remember to use them. Don't just toss them. A lot of them are still useful medicine and really useful magic. So remember, pull the food. You can eat a lot of them. Absolutely, thank you. You can totally eat a lot of them. They're great in salads. So yeah.
I feel like it is okay to throw some though, because if you're dealing with a truly invasive species, you're going to encounter them at a rate that you're not going to be able to
not too yeah,
through them all. Because certain stuff is edible. Like when we were talking about garlic mustard, that's one of the things that you can do with it is eat it, right?
Open up a salad bar, a pop-up salad bar.
Yeah, I haven't talked to a hungry tourist in tourist season. I'm like a goat.
I just say it like that.
That's my sign off. It's my birthday. What's up?
All right, everyone. Yes, happy Mother's Day. Love your mother. Goddess worship on Mother's Day, if anything. Seems like a good idea. We will see you next Sunday.
Bye.